Well, joining us now is Anthony King, Professor of War and Strategic Studies at Exeter University. A very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
I hope I explained that sufficiently well. This is a very complicated situation. It suits a number of the actors in this arena for this to spiral out of control, most notably Iran.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think you explained it very well. I mean, it is complicated, and certainly the details, and especially the sort of tactical details. There's so much sort of news and constant strikes and statements, but the sort of architecture of it, I think, can be simplified. And you've got essentially a dispute between Israel. When I say it's a dispute, and now a war between Israel and Hamas and its supporters, namely Iran and Hezbollah, as you've rightly said, and then the Gulf states operating as a potentially balancing element to that. So there's sort of, in the region, there's kind of three key blocks at work, and we're not quite sure where that's going to settle, whether it will settle. I mean, as you rightly say, I mean, there's serious concerns about escalation, and the warning this morning certainly points in that direction.
So just in terms of what happens next, of course, the United States President Joe Biden arrives tomorrow. He's having peace talks. I found it absolutely fascinating, the Israeli military casting doubt that there will be a ground incursion. I wonder how much of that is to do with Biden actually saying, hang on, we need to be strategic here. You are falling into a trap if you actually attempt a ground incursion.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my reading entirely, that they've delayed it in terms of President Biden's visit, not least because when the ground invasion occurs, and I'm absolutely certain it will, there'll be a massive rocket retaliation from Gaza, and also probably from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So they don't really want President Biden in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv in the middle of those kind of airstrikes. It's not excellent. And this is the problem you see for Israel, is that they've not been able to interdict the massive rocket strikes around and after that terrible attack Saturday, a week ago. And so a ground invasion of some sort becomes an imperative for the Israeli government, whether we like it or support it or not. There is good military reasons why they can't just allow what's going on to happen, and that's where the pressure comes from.
So in terms of a ground incursion, what does that look like? It's very complicated. Miles of network tunnels, probably booby-trapped. Also, I think Rishi Sunak used a very interesting word. He said that the Hamas militants have encased themselves or ensconced themselves amongst the civilian population. These are cowards.
Yeah, I mean, I probably, as a kind of scholar, I probably would steer clear of sort of terms like cowards. I mean, I think their atrocities are on the record. I think the way to probably understand it is this. You know, yes, they will use civilian shields. They already have, effectively, because they knew that Israel would retaliate to this attack Saturday, week ago, and they knew that would result in Palestinian civilian deaths. So they are completely ruthless in their outlook. I mean, militarily, they've become very sophisticated, actually, and that will be the problem for a ground offensive. And as I say, ground offensive, I think, will become militarily necessary to interdict rocket attacks, to degrade Hamas infrastructure and leadership, which the Israeli government, like it or not, have said it is an absolute necessity. Now, the thing is it's an urban area, dense urban area with, as you've rightly said, a very sophisticated, intricate tunnel system. It's going to be very difficult, even a limited incursion to, for instance, eliminate some stocks of rockets, kill fighters, kill leadership, etc., release the hostages. It's going to be a very, very difficult and, I think, costly operation, costly for citizens in Gaza, but very costly for the Israeli military too, in fact.
And just in terms of the million people on the move now in southern Gaza trying to wait for the Raffa Crossing to open, do you think the Raffa Crossing will open, or will it only open to allow humanitarian aid in? That's a great question, and one I'm not sure about. I mean, the trouble with the Raffa Crossing is, of course, it's going to require Egyptian authority as well, and they have equally, over the last 10 years, isolated Gaza as well. So I think it's you know, it's a difficult thing. I would hope it will happen. I suspect under the pressure of popular movement, it is likely it will.
but I think Egypt will resist it. I hope at least humanitarian aid will be allowed in, but it's not at all a certainty, even though you would think it should be.
So just in terms of our involvement, of course, we've sent ships, we've also sent helicopters, also the US has sent 2 naval warships to the region. Many people have said to me, why are we getting involved? But we have to be involved, don't we?
Well, I mean, it's an international incident. You know, it's a potentially absolutely explosive international incident. I mean, the fact is that Israel has been subject to an appalling terrorist attack. I mean, notwithstanding all the political debates about their occupation of the occupied territories, etc., and their policies towards those areas, the fact is it's a legitimate, recognised state that has suffered an appalling terrorist attack, which, in terms of Israel itself, is actually a worse attack than 9/11. So therefore, as part of an international community, and and as an ally of the US and of Israel, it's not. I don't think it's not unexpected or unreasonable that the UK and the US should therefore provide some military support. I mean, what's hopeful, what we might hope, is that on the basis of that military support in the response to an atrocity, they might also be able to exercise some leverage over this particular Israeli government and its policy towards Gaza and the actions they're, I think, inevitably going to take in the next weeks to come.
And a lot of fingers pointing at Netanyahu for not heeding warnings, allegedly from Egypt, that this attack was coming, but also in the fact that he's ignored the situation in Gaza for a long time. That's a much bigger conversation. Lots of people getting in touch, actually. Don in Chelmsford says, can you ask your expert if the United States might get directly involved in the conflict? If Iran acts against Israel, I suggest the answer is probably it would have to.
Well, you see, this is, I mean, there's various, around this, the extremes of coverage is a sort of Third World War kind of scenario that it's not anywhere in the center of the debate, but out on the edges, there are those concerns. And I would think it's highly unlikely, because the escalatory potential of that, I mean, it would effectively bring the US into almost direct conflict with Iran. And that has occurred at certain points. I mean, they assassinated the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Baghdad 3-4 years ago. So there have been occasional actual military actions between the two states. But I think the US would be deeply concerned about getting involved. I mean, they probably, I mean, I'd be pretty confident they'll be starting to provide some additional missile defense against the, hundreds and thousands of rockets that are coming into Israel. But I think an active role at this point, knowing the Biden administration, which is towards caution, I would think they'd be pretty resistant of a direct military involvement at this point. And if one did occur, well, we're in a quite different space in terms of geopolitics, and the situation moves from serious to pretty desperate, I would suggest.
Very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, Anthony. It's Anthony King there, Professor of War.